What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm e-bike builder. Today we're doing a face reveal in the dark. E-bike builder's face in the dark like a vampire. Let's go. So today we're going to take a look at the Lectric 1. So this was announced yesterday, I believe, March 13th. So here it is. Meet the new Lectric 1. Look at that. Effortless commute. World-class technology. So it's available for pre-order now. Let's go take a look at it. Alright, here we are. Introducing the Lectric 1. Unparalleled creativity and world-class automotive technology converge to create a truly effortless commute. Okay. So it says the highest power-to-weight ratio of any e-bike ever. That is a bold claim right there, my friends. What do you think about that? Where do I got this webcam? What do you think about that? Alright, let's keep going. The Lectric 1. Actually, I don't know if you can hear my speakers. Let's see. Can we turn these up? Let's see what this sounds like. Let's try and watch it together.
With e-bike design, there's a delicate balance between art and science. Engineers must find a space where imagination seamlessly intertwines with precision and where unparalleled creativity and world-class automotive technology converge to create a truly effortless commute. Today, Lectric e-bikes embraces this journey. Introducing the Lectric 1.
There were a lot of things on the screen all at once right there. Let's pause this. Let's see what's going on here. So here's all the big points, the cool things they want us to see. So there's 180mm rotors and hydraulic brakes, IP65 water resistant, up to 28 miles an hour top speed, Gates carbon drive, 20 by 2.5 city tires. So it says 750 watt Stealth M24 motor. Fenders and rear rack, they say you can get over 60 miles of range. And then so there's this pinion gearbox. That's kind of the big thing. The pinion C16i gearbox. So that has electronic semi-automatic shifting. So the thing about this bike is it's got that pinion gearbox up in the front, like in the bottom bracket. And then so it's got a Gates carbon belt drive instead of a chain. It's got a rear hub motor, 750 watt. I guess they're calling it stealth. Ooh, oh my god, stealth. It's stealth, guys. You're not going to hear it. I wonder what that is. Does anybody know what that is? Lectric? Bueller? What is that Stealth M24? What does that mean? Somebody tell me in the comments, please. Carrying on. So they're delivering it in May 2024. Alright, so let's keep going here. So this is kind of just like the marketing stuff. Is there anything else that we care about? So it's got this pinion semi-automatic shifting. So it's the pinion C16i gearbox is the blah blah blah. It lets you kind of pre-select which gear you want to start out in. So I guess you can tell it, I want to start out in the first gear, or I want to start out in the second gear, or whatever, you know, depending on how you're riding the bike. And then the gearbox knows which gear you like to start out in. And so I guess the point of that is probably so if you're riding in the city or on the streets or whatever, you might not want to start out in like the lowest gear. You might want to start out in like the second gear. I wonder what the gear ratio is and what the gearing of this gearbox is, because I haven't seen. I guess you'd have to go look that up. Look up the gearbox and see what Pinion says about it. Maybe we'll go look at it later. Not right now. Hold your horses, guys. Not yet. Alright, so in this picture we can kind of see how the belt drive interfaces with the rear hub back here. It's kind of an interesting rear dropout that they've got going on for this bike. I imagine that's just how it has to work for the belt. So it looks like there's a couple. It's kind of interesting how it's all put together. It seems like the dropout is one piece, but then the chainstay and the seat stay kind of come together right here, and then it's got these two kind of horizontal bolt holes. So that must hold the dropout in. Like it must. Is that held in right here? I'm assuming they can slide these dropouts back and forth, you know, to adjust the tension of the belt. But it's a little bit different back here, so that's pretty interesting. So as I'm looking at this bike, I'm kind of just thinking about like, well, what if I wanted to upgrade this to like a different motor? or something. I don't know that this bike would be the greatest bike to do that with, you know, because it comes with the gearbox and the belt drive, and I'm assuming that this belt hooks onto this motor with like a freewheel, like a threaded freewheel type thing, so there must be something where you thread it onto this hub, and then it's got kind of like the sprockets for the belt. So it says, with the Gates carbon drive belt, the Lectric One is nearly maintenance free with a carbon fiber reinforced belt, providing a chainless drivetrain that's clean, quiet, smooth, and strong. The automotive-grade belt lasts longer than standard chains, doesn't rust or require lubricant, runs smoother, and provides a quieter and more reliable ride. So this bike is for serious commuters and everyday riders. So they are building this bike to appeal to serious commuters. The maintenance-free aspect that comes along with that tech will excite everyday riders. So this is one of the things that I'm kind of wondering about is, in the past, they've always had these really cheap bikes, you know, $1,000, or like, man, I mean, what's the most that one of their bikes has cost in the past? Like $1,500 or maybe $2,000? But they're the cheap bikes, right? Like, I think they have some that are under $1,000, and it's just kind of mass market. I see kids riding them all over the place without helmets, you know. That's kind of the joke that I always go back to, is the Lectric kids, where their parents bought them the Lectric, and now they're riding it around out on the streets, like down the wrong side of the road. But today we're looking at the Lectric One. So let's look in some. So here's the pictures of it. I like how it looks, and I'm not a big fan of the 20-inch wheels. And I have a 20-inch wheel fat bike. It was the first e-bike that I got, and it's really squirrely. Like the wheels are so small, you know, like they're so the diameter of the wheels is so small that like you can barely go up a curb. It's like, you know, and on 26-inch fat tires you can just like bounce up over a curb, and it's like the curb wasn't even there. So that's the thing about these 20-inch wheels, is like when you hit things with them, they just don't roll over as good as a bigger wheel. But you know, this bike is meant for riding in the city and commuting, and it's got these 2.5-inch wide street tires on there, so it's not really meant to be going off-road, but there are potholes and stuff like that. So that's the other thing about this bike, is that it doesn't have front suspension, and I think that's kind of an interesting choice, considering that it's a US-based, you know, bike company, and there's no front suspension. Our roads can be pretty rough, I mean, especially in the cities. Like when I go to Minneapolis, I always hit a pothole, and then I'm questioning the integrity of my vehicle afterwards. And even in Arizona, when Lectric was doing kind of like the reveal event for this bike, and they had all these reviewers down in Arizona to try this bike out, and they went out for a group ride, and they got to try the bike for a while. And it looked pretty bumpy when they were riding it on the roads. Even in the bike lane, like they had a protected bike lane that they were riding this thing in, and it looked really bumpy. Let's go see, since I'm talking about it, let's go see how bumpy it looks to ride this bike in the street. So I'm gonna go pull that up. Alright, so here we are on Jeremiah McIntosh's channel. I don't have anything against this guy. So it was getting bumpy. Let's see here. Let's see. It was getting bumpy at some point. Max speed. Alright, here it is. So Jeremiah, he was riding this thing with one hand, holding this big long GoPro stick. Just about took out Chris Cross and David Brand New with it. He's kind of a hazard, but let's watch this.
PAS 3.
Oh, he's at the stop.
3.
Let's get this going, Jeremiah.
Here
we go. Whoa! Hold on to the bars, Jeremiah.
And it's
I better turn down the gain on my mic. It might get loud here. Can you guys still hear me? All right.
5 revolutions per minute. I'm going to pause again. And I do have this unlocked to the max speed, so it should go 28 miles an hour.
Doesn't
I'm
it look
25 right now.
Guys?
It is a little bit hard
Look at that.
to go max speed here one-handed, because it's a little bit bumpy here with no front suspension. It's a little bit dangerous to do that. But I'm hitting 28 right now, 28.5 according to the bike. So very nice.
So that's what this bike is going to be like without any front suspension. I think it's kind of an interesting choice. It's a commuter bike. We're in the United States. I mean, you can go basically go out onto any street anywhere, right? And it's far from perfect. You're going to be hitting bumps. And in the United States, they call it a bike lane, but it's really like a gutter, right? It's where all of the stuff gets swept off of the road into the gutter, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, get in the bike lane, guys. You got a bike lane." It's like, no, it's a gutter with it full of debris, right? So, I mean, this is the reality of riding a bike in the United States. You just got to be aware of it. So, this bike doesn't have any front suspension, and this is how it's going to be.
To go max speed here, one-handed, because it's a little bit bumpy here with no front suspension. It's a little bit dangerous to do that. But I'm hitting 28 right now, 28.5 according to the bike. So very nice speed, very nice power. Here comes David Brand new.
Watch out, watch out, watch out. Oh my God. Oh man. Look how far his camera is hanging over the sidewalk. Be careful, Jeremiah. Be careful. All right. So thanks to Jeremiah for sharing with us how bumpy it is without any front suspension. I think Lectric is going to have some kind of an option. They have to, right? I think this is what they're doing is they want to just say, you know, starting at $19.99, they want to be able to say that. But in reality, I think that you're going to need to put quite a bit of money into this bike to make it a comfortable ride and be able to, like, you know, commute with it. And I see what they're doing, right? Like, they want to keep the price down because it's Lectric after all. This is a lot different than most of their bikes, you know. And I'm still kind of wondering, like, you see a lot of Lectric people that are like, "Ooh, that's way too much for me. I can't afford that." And it's going to be interesting to see kind of like who ends up buying this bike, because it seems like a lot of Lectric's existing customers are just kind of like, you know, turned away by the price, and it's just more than, you know, they want to pay. But I think what they're going to do is it's just going to come with the rigid fork, and then they'll have, maybe in the future as an upgrade, they'll have a suspension fork where it's like $200 more for the suspension fork or whatever, right? And I guess this fork is suspension adjusted so that if you did put a suspension fork on this bike, it would be, you know, it wouldn't mess with the geometry, because, you know, if you have a bike that has a rigid fork that isn't adjusted for suspension, when you add a suspension fork, they're usually longer, right? And that can kind of push the whole front of the bike up, right? If the fork is longer, then the head tube goes up a little bit, and then the whole bike, like the whole bike kind of sits a little bit higher. So that's nice that they have a suspension adjusted fork on here, so that if you want to get a suspension fork, you should be able to. But again, that's an upgrade that's going to cost like $200, so you got to keep that in mind. The other thing about this is just the battery is so small. I talked about this in my previous video, but the battery is 10 amp hours, and it's just not very big. You can pay $200 more for this long range battery. That bumps the price up to $2,200. But even 14 amp hours, like, that's not very much. I don't understand how that makes sense. Plus $200 to get 4 more amp hours. Alright guys, so I'm on the 18650 battery store. This is where I buy my battery cells. I'm looking at the Samsung 50E cells. So this is a 21700 5000 milliamp hour 10 amp battery cell. So if we had a 13 amp 3P battery, it'd be 13 times 3 cells. And so that's 39. So 39 cells. If you buy more than 10 of these cells, you get them each for $455. So we'll do $455 times 13 times 3 is 177. So just the cells would be $177. But what I'm trying to understand is, why is the long range battery $200 more than the standard battery, right? The standard battery is probably like 2 parallel groups, so if we do times 2, so the standard battery probably about $120 worth of cells, and then the long range battery is probably like $180 worth of cells. So it's about a $60 difference in the cost of cells between those two options. I just wonder why they make you pay $200 to upgrade from the standard battery to the long range battery. That's kind of interesting to me. But anyways, I mean, so that's the battery. They're both small. Like the standard battery is small. The long range battery is not that long range either. It seems like it only really has a couple options for mounting batteries. I mean, they've got the battery right here. And so, I mean, it looks like you could, so this, I don't know if this is the 10 amp, I'm assuming this is the 10 amp hour battery. So the 14 amp hour one is probably a little bit longer. I imagine it's probably like maybe 30% longer, or maybe even 50% longer. So if you get that 14 amp hour one, I wonder how much that sticks up out, like how far that would come up. It might prevent you, if you get that long range battery, it might prevent you from lowering the seat post all the way down into the seat tube. So that's kind of interesting. But I wonder if you can even fit a 20 amp battery in here. I wonder how far up a 20 amp battery would go. So I mean, that's the one spot where the battery comes mounted. You could probably mount a battery on this back rack, as long as it's not like the X-Peak. But other than that, you basically got, you know, two options for mounting the battery, like right here and then right here. There's not a whole lot of room under the down tube where you could put a battery. I sometimes see people put a battery under the down tube, but I don't know about that. You could maybe get a front basket or something. It might be a little bit weird with a battery in the front basket, adding weight like that, but alright, so that's interesting. I mean, the battery options, I don't think I would pay extra for this long range battery. I don't think there's anything special about the battery. You know, I've seen Rad Power Bike, their new batteries have some special, you know, smart, safe, whatever technology in them, where each individual cell is like, has some kind of like resin or like coating around it that is supposed to be flame retardant and prevent, you know, thermal runaway. So it's kind of like technology that you might find in car batteries is starting to make its way into the Rad Power Bikes batteries. You know, it's like a safety feature. But I don't think that these batteries, like, I don't think there's anything good about them. And I wonder, does Lectric use good battery cells, or are they just kind of garbage? I really don't know. I'm assuming they use good cells. Where is the battery? Do they tell you? Do they tell you what cells are in batteries? So now I'm really wondering, does Lectric use good cells in their batteries? I just assumed they do because, you know, like Aventon, right? I know that Aventon uses good cells in their batteries, like Samsung. My Aventon bike has Samsung cells and it's still working like 5 years later. I know I'm pretty sure Rad uses good cells in their batteries. I thought that all of the US e-bike companies use good cells in their batteries, so I wonder what kind of cells Lectric uses, because it doesn't seem to say. When they don't tell you, that usually means that it's like garbage cells. So I wonder what they're using. I mean, I'm sure it's like okay, but it might not be like Samsung, you know? Yeah, so I don't know. Let me know in the comments, guys. Does Lectric use good cells in their batteries? I'm not really sure. So let's think about like these components that come on this bike that are special. I want to highlight these because this is like the whole reason that this bike is interesting. So the special thing about this bike is it's got some components on it that are noteworthy. It's got this pinion gearbox in the bottom bracket, where it kind of like automatically shifts depending on how fast you're going on the bike, and if you're going uphill or going downhill or slamming on the brakes, you know, it'll downshift and get you into a low gear so that when you start off again, you're in the right gear. So it's almost like shifting for dummies, right? This gearbox. And these are normally a pretty expensive component. They're not found on any other, you know, $2,000 e-bikes. And this is just the gearbox. So like the really, really fancy e-bikes, they have the pinion where it's a gearbox and a mid-drive motor together, right? So this isn't that. This isn't a mid-drive. This is just a gearbox. But all of the gears are inside, right? They're internal to this gearbox, and they've got presumably some kind of oil inside of there, keeping all the gears lubricated and going, right? So it's got advantages over, you know, like a chain and derailleur system in terms of like the maintenance. You don't have to deal with anything. Like when you've got a gearbox in the front and then a hub motor with a belt drive, you don't really have to deal with lubing your chain, or you don't really have to deal with a derailleur. You know, and I know that a lot of people, there's a lot of reasons why people might prefer a chain and derailleur. Like it's just more simple. You can bring it to any bike shop And, you know, the wrench monkey at the bike shop can fix your derailleur and lube your chain and you're good to go, right? Like chain and derailleur, been around for a long time, proven system. It's simple, it's easy to work on. There's no, like, chains are $5, derailleurs are cheap. They all have the same limit screws and, you know, the B screws and the same adjustments on all derailleurs. Whereas, you know, a belt, I imagine a belt costs more than a chain by a good amount, especially like a fancy brand name belt, you know, where it's like a Gates belt, carbon belt from Gates. Right, so I'm imagining those carbon belts are more expensive than a chain by like an order of magnitude. They do last a lot longer, so you probably won't have to deal with it. I mean, I think that's kind of who this bike is for, is people they don't necessarily like even care about bikes. Like they just want to hop on something and go and not have to deal with it. They don't want to have to lube the chain or adjust the derailleur or, you know, stuff like the shift gears, right? Like they just want to hop on and go. So this is like the jump from like MapQuest back in the 2000s, where you'd go on MapQuest and like print out a map, you know, on paper, and then you'd be driving around with this map that you printed out. And then at some point we got smartphones and Google Maps on our phones, and it's just got, you know, navigation, and it just tells you where to go. This is kind of like that, right, for bikes. It's like if you don't want to shift the gears on your bike, this bike is for you. If you don't want to deal with the greasy chain, then this bike is for you. And I think it's one of those things where this gearbox, if you rode around on this gearbox and got used to it shifting the gears for you automatically, you'd probably get kind of spoiled and like used to it. And then if you hopped back on some other bike, you would be like, what is this? What is this? You know, what is this shifter? This chain is greasy. I don't like this. It's just, that's one of the things I'm wondering about, is like, who is this bike for, right? Like, who are they making this thing for? I think the gearbox is cool, but you gotta wonder, like, what happens if something inside of this gearbox breaks or needs to get replaced or worked on? It looked pretty complicated inside of that thing. Like all of the gears, it looks like it, you know, it's got like 6 gears in there, and then there's some electronics in there. It looks like there's a wire that comes out of this gearbox and must connect to the controller. So I think that the controller on this bike is going to be some kind of like proprietary controller, where it's got some kind of a connector that connects to the pinion gearbox and communicates with that pinion gearbox. So I don't think it would be easy. It probably wouldn't be easy to put a different controller on this bike, just because of that. Like you're not going to be able to go find some other controller where it has that connection that goes to this pinion gearbox. So I don't know, like this bike, it's probably not like a great bike for upgrading. Like if that's what you're into, is upgrading bikes and like putting a different motor on your bike, like this thing isn't gonna be very upgradable, I don't think, in terms of like putting a different motor, like different controller or stuff like that, higher voltage. This bike is probably just kind of like, you buy the bike, you put a suspension seat post on it and a suspension fork, and then, or maybe it's like some different stem and bars, and then you just kind of ride it as it is and just ride it into the ground, you know, until it breaks down and something goes wrong. It's not really meant to be like modified. You're not going to get a different controller. Probably not going to get a different motor. I wonder what motor is on there. It looked like a Bafang motor from the stampings that were on it, like the numbers and the model numbers and stuff. It looks exactly like Bafang. And Jeremiah, he got a good shot of that in his video. So I think it's a Bafang motor, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like a new one or what. I wonder what the rear dropouts on this bike are. Is it 135 millimeters, or how wide are the rear dropouts on this thing? Because it's a 2.5 inch wheel, but that motor, it almost looks like a fat bike motor. So I wonder if the rear dropout, I don't know. I wonder how wide the rear dropouts are. I like that the wheels are 2.5 inches wide. You could get some hookworms, put them on there. That'd be pretty sweet. These Chow Yang street tires look pretty good too. I like Chow Yangs. So what else? What else do we got? So a whole bunch of people did videos on this thing. I'm gonna watch some of this stuff. I might edit bits and pieces of it out. But they did this thing in Arizona where they invited a bunch of people out there, and they revealed this bike, the Lectric One. So there's all these people that got to go try it out. So let's watch some of this stuff. I'm gonna have to see if you can hear my speakers. Let's see here. Alright, so I've watched a bunch of videos on this bike. I don't know why it's so interesting to me. It's just that pinion gearbox and the belt drive, and it's electric. I don't know, it just really caught my attention. But so I've watched a lot of these reviews. I know I made fun of Jeremiah, my previous video. He did do a good job. He does a good job with his videos. I'll give him credit where credit's due. You just gotta take it with a grain of salt.
With no front suspension.
So I mean, they were out in Arizona. They all got to go hang out with Lectric. Here's Jeremiah. They're at the cul-de-sac in Arizona. Some little bike, no car community. I don't know how big it is, but they're trying to get that started. So they're out, and you can see, oh yeah, there's David Brand New, and there's Levi back there, and so there's all of the people that were invited to go try this bike out. I guess some of them, there were kind of mixed thoughts on the auto shifting. Like some people, it seemed like you kind of have to get used to it. I guess it only auto shifts when you stop pedaling, which I thought was kind of interesting because I thought that the gearbox could shift under load, right? So I wonder why it only shifts when you pause pedaling. I thought that was kind of interesting. So Jeremiah, he talks about like Pinion Smart Shift a little bit. Like there's an app. You can set the target cadence, and he's out hanging out. Is that e-bike products? I get all these people confused, and like I know their faces, but I forget which channel they're from. So I think that's e-bike products. I don't know. I watch them all. I like some more than others. So then right here he's figuring out the smart shift system. So it looks like there's some different settings in the app.
Iron number one, so I think I figured it out. So smart.
So that's another thing about this bike, guys, is that this gearbox has some cool things it can do, but you need an app, right? And so Gary from Gary's e-bike adventures, he made a comment on my previous video where he was saying, well, I don't really like having apps connected to my bike. And I agree with that. Like, I don't want to have an app connected to my bike that's necessary. I mean, if it's just kind of like added features, then I'm okay with it, and it's optional, like an optional app. But when things require an app to function, that can be kind of a problem, especially if it's like a smaller company and then they go bankrupt or something. Because when you're developing apps, like it costs money. You have to have a developer, you know, a software engineer that can work on these apps and maintain them. And even if you make an app and then you put it on the App Store and you don't change anything, like Apple and Google, they're always changing things so that you'll have to change your app and update it, or else it'll just stop working, and then they'll stop showing it in the App Store. So anytime you've got a product that like depends on an app, that also is dependent on the company staying in business and retaining a developer, you know, on salary to keep that app maintained and functional and fix the bugs and stuff like that. Now this is Lectric, so I'm not as concerned about it, right? Like Lectric is a big company. I don't think they're going to go bankrupt anytime soon or stop maintaining the app. Like I think they're going to, you know, keep this app running. But you just have to wonder, like, if you bought this bike and then like in 5 years or 10 years or something, you're going to try and download this app and get it to work with your Lectric One from 10 years ago. Like you might run into some problems, you know, just when apps get updated. And so I don't know how I feel about the app. It's cool that it has these features, but I wish you could adjust these features in the setting of the display somehow. And I wonder, like, does this use Bluetooth? It must, if it's connecting to your phone wirelessly, so it must use Bluetooth. And that would also mean that this Bluetooth module inside of the bike is always going to be going, right? It's like, as long as the battery is switched on, the Bluetooth module is always going to be going, draining that battery down. So this is probably going to be one of those bikes where the battery is just kind of like always draining, you know, and you'll have to keep an eye on it. Like you'll have to probably charge this bike, like if it's in storage or something, you're probably going to have to charge this bike like every few weeks, maybe, just because I think it's probably going to have Bluetooth and stuff inside of it, you know, these smart features that are going to be constantly draining the battery even when you're not using the bike. So I mean, I think it's cool that there's an app and it's got smart select, pre-select, you know, start gear, target cadence. It's cool, but I wish you could control all of those things from the display on the bike and you wouldn't need a separate app. I think in the future there might even be e-bikes where it just has a phone mount on the bike and then your phone is the display. Like, doesn't that make a lot of sense? Because e-bike displays, you know, they're like $50, $100, $150. So I think in the future, like companies, they might just put a phone mount on the bars and then just tell you like you got to use your phone for the display. That might be a thing that's coming. So back to the gearbox and the auto shift. Jeremiah goes through it a little bit.
As I start pedaling, when I pull out of this turn here, it will start in 3 and then automatically shift up those gears till I hit the max gear to keep my pedal cadence set at 45. But like I said, you do have to pause in your pedaling once you get up to a higher speed for it to shift up, and as you slow down, it will automatically shift back down for you. All right, here we go. It's set to start in 3. So as you can see here, I'm going to pause pedaling.
These
It's going to
roads.
shift up, and it's going to maintain that cadence
Here's that bumpy
of
part
45 revolutions per minute. I'm going to pause again.
Look how bumpy this is.
And I do have this unlocked to the max speed, so it should go 28 miles an hour. I'm doing 25 right now. It is a little bit hard to go max speed here one-handed because it's a little bit bumpy here with no front suspension. It's a little bit.
See how even when you're in the bike lane, it's just kind of like, I don't want to be here. You know, like bike lanes suck. You just need an e-bike that can go fast. It solves so many problems.
Dangerous to do that. But I'm hitting 28 right now, 28.5 according to the bike. So very nice speed, very nice power. Here comes David brand new.
Watch out, David. Oh my God, watch out.
Whew, there's some glass on the road there.
There's always glass in the bike lane. Like, we just gotta call it what it is, guys. It's the bike gutter, right? It's the bike gutter. That's where they sweep all the glass shards and then they're just like, F you, cyclists, get over in the bike gutter, share the road.
Man, this bike is cruising good. Lots of power. Man, I feel like I might have almost hit Chris Cross with my GoPro. Sorry, Chris. I didn't think I had it over the sidewalk that far. But then I heard him pull it back and run.
All right. So that was Jeremiah's little ride, and my favorite part about Jeremiah's video, and I think he did do one of the better videos. I like how he always has things time-stamped in his video, so you can kind of find things. I think he does a good job with the videos. You just gotta take it with a grain of salt. But my favorite part about Jeremiah's video was he like rides the bike way out somewhere, and then he lost track of time, and he was like late going back. And that's something that I would have totally done. Like, I would have rode this bike like up a mountain or something, and I'd be looking at my watch like, oh man, I was supposed to be back half an hour ago. So I thought it was pretty funny that like the last few minutes of his ride,
When you pull the back brake lever, and it also
like,
has
oh man, I'm
a
late.
reflective strip around the
I gotta be
front
back in
and
3
the rear
minutes.
tire, which is awesome to see for safety as well. And it's setting on a pair of 20 by 2.5 inch tires. So really nice, small, and compact for being able to transport it and put it in vehicles easily, even though it doesn't fold. But I don't have much time with this bike. Unfortunately, I have to get back to the group. I'm supposed to meet them at 11:30, and it is already 11:27. So
that's totally something that I would do. Gotta be back. What time is it? Oh man, we gotta be back in 3 minutes. And then it looks like it took him a while to get back. So I like that. I appreciate that he shared that riding back late footage. I know there might have been a little bit of anxiety happening there, trying to get back on time. I would have done the same thing. I probably would have been even more late. So thanks for sharing that, Jeremiah. I appreciate you and your videos. Now, what else? So Chris Cross, I liked this video because he actually shared the whole like reveal event with everybody talking.
What's good, electricians? So, Lectric.
So I guess Levi, the Lectric guy, came walking out, and I don't know, they had some rap song playing from like when I was in like middle school. I mean, this has got to be like he had some rap song playing from like 20 something years ago, and I was like, man. Anyways, he came out they pull the tarp up off this thing and they reveal it. And Levi, he's really amped up. Like, this dude, he is intense. He is amped up about this thing. And Crisscross, he's got this reveal event. I think he was one of the only guys that ran this whole talk, where Levi and the other guy, I don't know, what's his name? Rob? I don't know. These are the Lectric founders revealing it, right? So Crisscross, he has a good video where you can hear them talk about this. Levi, I don't know if he's drinking Red Bull or what was going on immediately prior to him walking out here. But he was really amped up. Let's just take a quick moment to hear a little bit of what he has to say.
I think of Lectric and where we've taken it so far. There's a lot to be proud of what we've accomplished. The innovation, you know, from, well, that first LX bike was not very good. We only sold about 40 of those. But then the XP 1.0 and the progression to that, to the 2.0. And, you know, we successfully have made the XP the #1 selling folding bike in the United States, but it is also the #1 selling e-bike just in general. And so that's something we're really excited and proud of. But that was, you know, all Robbie and I could handle at that time. And then we added, you know, bandwidth. This is, you know, many of you have gone and seen our facility and interacted with team members at Lectric beyond just Robbie and myself, and you get to see that there's more to us. And because there's more to us, our ceiling is raised. We're able to do more. We are now able to do things like
And for some reason, they're doing this thing like underneath an airport. So the whole time there's like planes flying like 10 feet overhead and you can't hear anything. Okay, let's get to the reveal here. So here it is. Here's the reveal. Let's go.
Robbie is the one, the only, the Lectric one.
So thanks again to Crisscrossed for sharing this reveal video. Everybody else seemed to chop it up into a million different pieces, and I wish that they would have just kind of shared the thing in its entirety. I don't know if Lectric even shared this, a recording of this. I didn't really see it, but they did like a whole big talk here, and they got pretty amped up.
What did we just do here? We just broke the industry.
And I love how they're lifting up this like noisy ass tarp, and Levi is trying to like talk over it.
In terms of component selection, and I'm just going to jump right to the headline of this bike, which is the drivetrain. So you're going to see some representation.
Man, this is some low energy tarp lifting, guys. Like, just lift that thing and get it out of the way and just get out of there. Like, stop making all the noise. It's like rustling and like, oh yeah. It's like, lift that fucking thing up and get it out of there, and let's hear what Levi has to say. We got some low energy tarp lifters.
From Gideon and Gates here today. If you want to be the best, you can only work with the best. There's no substitution for it. You have to work with the best. And that is what we're interested in.
How many people does it take to lift this tarp? What, they got like 4 people, like 3 people over there? You guys, what's going on?
We wanted to collaborate with the industry leaders in.
Yeah, stop. This tarp guy, fire tarp guy, get him out of there. If I was Levi, I would have fired the tarp boys. You're fired. Get the f out of here. Can't even lift the tarp.
In order to make the best commuting bike possible. You can tell that we're going after every segment, the folding, the trike, the cargo, the off-road, the adventure, but we have ignored the community where there's the most opportunity to go after car miles. So we're going to go.
So they're going after car miles with this bike. So they're trying to make this thing like a commuter, right? For people, you know, like, they want people riding these instead of cars.
After it, you have to go after it with a haymaker. And so what we're staring at right now is we did not do pinion and gates just to do those names. We did the best pinion system. We did the best gates system. We have a pinion C1, which means they're
So I'd like to interject here, and whenever you hear these like business types, these executive types selling you on things, and they're saying like words like the best, right? Or like they're making these bold claims, like you always gotta double check. I'm not sure. I don't know anything about these pinion gearboxes, but I know that there are probably better ones that have the mid-drive built into them with the gearbox. So maybe this is like the best, gearbox that they have, but it's not like the best pinion, drive unit, right?
C1 six speed I. So it has the electronic smart shift, the semi-automatic shifting built into it. We then pair that system with a Gates CDC, their second best belt they offer in their bike division, paired with a CDX sprocket, which is the best sprocket they offer over there at Gates. So this drivetrain that we elected to do, well, Rob, I think it's probably a good idea for you to explain where the drivetrain even is, and let me flip this around for the folks.
Sure. So for those who aren't familiar, belt drives are kind of the ideal solution for commuting bikes, right? They're clean, they're quiet, they're reliable, and they're long lasting, right? They last 2 to 3 times as long as your traditional chain. You basically need to do zero maintenance on this thing, right? So when you go out and you ride in the rain and you're worried about your chain getting rusty or something else, forget about that with the belt, right?
All right, so now they're kind of talking about the benefits of the belt drive. And so my thoughts on the belt drive are, I think it's cool, right? I mean, they're stronger, they're quieter, they're smoother, you don't have to lube them. But I just wonder, how much do they cost? So what do you say? It was like a Gates Carbon CDX or something? Let's go. I'm going to try and figure out how much one of those costs to replace. All right, so I just looked it up, and it seems like a replacement CDX belt is probably like $100. So the belt is cool, but let's think about it. I use a chain that's $5, and then I put some wax on it, and that prevents it from getting dirty. Right? And I mean, it can still last a long time, especially when you've got the wax on there and you add more occasionally. And I've done a lot of power with my chain, like thousands of watts, almost 5,000 watts on my $5 bike chain, SRAM 8-speed $5 chain with a little bit of wax on it, and it works just fine. Like, it doesn't get dirty. If it breaks, I have another spare chain in my kit that I bring with me, and I pop it right on my bike. You got a quick link, snap it together, and I can keep going, right? So, I mean, the belt is cool, but if you do a chain right with some wax, and you check your chain and make sure it's not stretching out after a good 1,000 miles or so, like if you do a chain right, it can work pretty good. And you can, with wax, you don't have to deal with cleanliness and like the greasy chain getting all over. It's not that high maintenance. I mean, you don't have to do the wax pot or anything like that. There's drip wax, right, where it's wax suspended in some kind of a solvent, and then you just drip it on the chain. That's what I do. It's just wax and rubbing alcohol. So these belts, I mean, they're cool, but they're also expensive, and I don't know what, like, I think you got to take the wheel off the bike to replace a belt, right? Whereas with the chain, it has a quick link, and I don't even have to do anything. If you break a chain or you got to put a new chain on, you pop the quick link off and you put a new chain on with the quick link. So it's pretty easy. Now the belt, I guess it's just kind of like more beginner friendly, like if people don't want to deal with, doing the research about figuring out what kind of wax to put on their chain. I mean, if you're using like oily chain waxes, then yeah, it's just terrible, right? And you'll go on one ride and it gets all full of like dust and dirt and grime and stuff. And those traditional chain oils and chain lubes, they turn into a grinding paste pretty much immediately. And if you're not using some kind of a wax, like, you're just doing it wrong and you're just going to be suffering. So, I don't know. I mean, belt is cool. I think it's kind of made for people that just don't want to deal with it, right? Like, they don't want to deal with the chain. They don't want to deal with the derailleur. They don't want to they just want to go, right? And I guess the belt works for that, but you know, it's expensive. It's $100. You got to take the wheel off the bike to put a new one on. It's not going to be as easily, you know, fixed or replaced in the field if something goes wrong. Not that it would. I think there's less chances of like a belt breaking. You know, I think they're really crazy strong, and you shouldn't have problems with them breaking or anything like that. Anyways, let's keep this thing going. So the belt is cool, but if you do a chain right with wax and you just keep an eye on it, make sure it's not getting stretched out and worn out, chains can work pretty good too.
Just, it doesn't happen. You can be assured that when you get on this thing, it's going to work for you. It's going to be there every day in, day out. So when we're thinking about building a commuter, our minds went straight to belt drive, right? But then thinking about the rest of the build and staying true to what makes Lectric and offering this fantastic experience, we knew we wanted high speed, right? We wanted class 3 performance, and we wanted an awesome throttle on this thing. And we wanted high torque, right? And so we're known for that across all of our bikes. We have these super powerful hub motors with the 20-inch wheel. The acceleration is out of this world, and it's like riding around on a mini spaceship, basically.
I think that might be a little bit exaggerated. That's some executive exaggeration, is what I call that.
And so we knew we wanted to go hub drive, and we knew we wanted to go belt drive. Now you may be asking yourselves, well, if you have a hub drive and you have a belt drive, how are you going to change gears? Because you can't have a derailleur when you have a belt drive, right? So logically, the gears need to go somewhere, and so they go up here in the BB, and that's the pinion system that Levi's talking about, right? So the derailleur, the gears, they're all situated inside of that pinion gearbox up front, and you've got 6 gears up there, right?
Okay, so I'm going to skip through the part where the plane is flying over. So he's talking about the belt drive, the pinion.
It also is super reliable and super low maintenance. So basically the only thing that you have to be worried about with this pinion thing is that you don't have to be worried about it, right? I mean, like, you really only need to change the oil on the pinion system every 6,000 or 7,000 miles, and that's it. Otherwise, this thing just runs, right?
So it seems like about once a year, you're probably going to have to put some new oil in that pinion gearbox.
In your derailleur, no.
If you ride a lot, potentially twice a year.
And it works instantly. There is no, by the time you think that I'm shifting, you have shifted. You have electronic shifting that is happening right the moment it's already in the next gear by the time you thought that it needed to go. So there's that aspect, that instantaneous delivery. But that's, you know, Robbie and I ride different, right? And so I think if you're making an investment into a gearbox like this, you really want it to be.
So what was Robbie going to say there? Levi just kind of like, wow, like took over. I thought Robbie was telling us about it.
Tailored to your riding experience, because Zach from BPL, this is Pinions North Arm.
So then they make the claim that the cheapest e-bike that has this gearbox in the US currently is like $13,000, and that sounds a little bit steep to me. I don't know about that. So it's way cheaper than Stromer is what these guys are saying. But I thought that the Stromers had like the mid-drive, you know, where it's the gearbox and the mid-drive, like the Pinion MGU, where it's the gearbox and the mid-drive together. And those are the bikes that cost like $13,000. So I don't know. I mean, this comparison, comparing it to Stromer, I'm not like the foremost expert on Stromers. I think Cerebral Palsy Biker, I don't know if you've seen his YouTube channel, but I watch from time to time. He's kind of a Stromer expert. He's got some Stromers. Maybe I'll ask him about it. He's got some good videos, by the way, where he rides his e-bike out in like Amish country. Like he's out in Ohio. It's kind of like a whole different world out there, so check out his channel. So then there's the Pinion app. I don't know about that comparison against the Stromer, but then there's this Pinion app, so they're talking about this. We talked about the app a little bit and how it might be a disadvantage, but he's going to tell us about kind of what you can do with the app and what features that has.
Step further with this semi-automatic smart shifting. So you've got electronic shifting, you've got 6 speeds, But then you have the Pinion Smart Shift app. And so what that app allows you to do is dial in exactly when, where, and how this thing shifts. So when we say it's semi-automatic shifting, and you'll all get an opportunity to do this in a moment, you set your riding cadence, so you may prefer to pedal a little more slowly, maybe 45 RPM, or you may prefer to pedal at 90 RPM, you know? And you can dial that in with the Pinion system and say, okay, I like a cadence of 60 RPM, and then it will automatically shift you to put you in that comfortable cadence when you get there.
So that was kind of a long way of saying that the gearbox, you can use the app to tell it what cadence you prefer, and then the gearbox will try and, maintain a gear where you've got that cadence. So that was the reveal event. Let's see. So here's Lectric Bike Journal, and we're talking with Levi again. Let's see what else he has to say here.
Down to Arizona to Lectric.
I want to hear it from the source. I want to hear about this Lectric one from Levi, from the dude.
Without having a talk with Levi. Now, Levi was able to give us a great rundown of this bike and to be able to share that information with you. But we were curious about one thing. What is the bike that you ride?
This now. Yeah.
What did it replace? You said now.
I was
So Levi, he rides this now. This is the bike that he rides.
huge on the XP Lite for a while.
So that's how it should be. I want to see Levi ripping around on this thing, full send off of jumps.
Just because BMXy attitude. Then when I came out with Expedition, that
Like, take the Lectric One to Whistler. Like the Levi Lectric One Whistler road trip. I want to see him take that thing down Whistler.
place it just because the power delivery and that bike as a package is
Whistler's a crazy mountain bike place in Canada
so freaky.
with huge
though.
jumps.
But then this is just next level because it's kind of a flex, just like having an Pinion system under your legs. But it's also just like simpler, and you get a lot of like.
I can tell after watching these videos and listening to him talk, Levi likes to flex.
Always with the same power delivery, but it's way more maneuverable. Like this weighs significantly less. It's shorter in dimension, so it's like this is just easier to like grab and ride than what my Expedition is.
Yeah. And for you, is the Pinion the pinnacle of all the updates, new things to the electric brand? Is the Pinion like, that's what I'm most proud of, that we were able to do?
Totally, because like no one was going to make a bet that Lectric could partner with a brand like Pinion, right? So it was out of question, and it's now a reality.
It's definitely a reality. It performs very well. Do you think that this technology might be kind of pushing into the future of Lectric, depending on the response?
I totally hope this is not the last bike I get to develop that uses Gates technology and Pinion technology. Like, once you do it, you're like, all right, it'd be fun to do again. So
I do hope that this Lectric One does well. It is kind of disruptive just because it's got these components on a bike that's in this price range. Like you're not really going to find another bike that's $2,000 with a Pinion gearbox, right? And of course, to make that $2,000 price, to make that price tag, they had a small battery. They cut some corners with the battery and stuff. But I mean, it's some cool componentry on a bike in the $2,000 price range.
we got a lot of work to do, and we want to enjoy this moment and this bike, but it definitely gets the internal gears going.
If you had to think of the ideal consumer, the ideal rider for this bike, who is that person?
I think a commuter, like a true commuter, is someone who's going to appreciate this the most. I think there's still those entry-level riders from Lectric who just want the best from Lectric, maybe have a flexible budget, and they are going to get to enjoy world-class engineering, and they may not even understand completely what they're getting in terms.
So that's one thing that I'm kind of wondering about is like I've seen a lot of Lectric fans and Lectric, people in the comments, and a lot of them are saying, "Oh, I can't afford this. This is way out of my price range," and it's like they don't even want to talk about it or like think about it because they see the price tag and they're just like, they're used to like the Lectric $800 price tag. So I mean, it is kind of interesting that Lectric is coming out with this thing that's starts at $2,000 because that's not their typical, target audience. From what I've seen, a lot of these electrics, like it's just that like parents buying little kids like the cheapest possible e-bike, to go riding down the street. I'm still wondering about this Lectric one because they're saying it's a commuter bike, but then it's got such a small battery. And of course, there's like an upgrade where you can upgrade it to, extended range and 14 amp hours. But I mean, that's still not, how far can you go on 14 amp hours if you're throttling this thing? I mean, probably I think if you had the 10 amp hour battery, you maybe get like 20 miles on this thing going full throttle, like 15 or 20 miles. And if you're on the 14 amp hour, I mean, maybe a little bit more than that, but you're not going to be commuting far with 10 or 14 amp hours, really. I get what they're doing. It doesn't make sense to put, like you just put a entry-level small battery on there, and if people want a bigger one, they can pay for it. But like we looked at before, those batteries, like $200 extra for 4 amp hours more in the battery, man, this is like blinding me. But that price for the extra battery is kind of crazy. Like you're paying $200 for 4 more amp hours. So I'm hoping that they have some good cells in there, or otherwise the cost of that battery upgrade is kind of insane. And again, if you know what kind of cells Lectric uses in their batteries, let me know, because that's a question that I do have. And if they're like generic cells, and I never realized that. I always made the assumption they have good cells. So what else? We have all these reviewers. I'm gonna review the reviews. So I think one of my favorite Lectric One reviews, I searched this yesterday and like the order of all these videos changed. And I searched for Lectric One and it's like I can barely find. I know there's more videos than this. What is going on, YouTube? This electric bike report video, it's got no timestamps.
But in this case, we were.
And it seems like he was just recording footage, but then he's like talking over the footage. I like it when it's more of like a vlog style thing where like you're riding the bike and talking at the same time, and it's kind of like, like you're in the moment talking about the bike you're riding. I don't like these things where it's like you have some footage and then there's somebody kind of like talking over it after the fact. I don't know. It just makes me not really want to watch this one. So for this one, I rate that one as not very good. We watched some of that. We watched the reveal from Crisscross.
Not a folding frame. Here's some more fun differences.
I heard a lot of people complaining about how this thing isn't folding, and it's just like, I would have thought by now, everybody that's bought a folding bike would realize the mistake that they made. Because the first e-bike that I bought, it was a folding bike, and I folded that thing like a total of like 2 times before I threw my back out, because it's just like this awkward, it's just like this awkward weight, and the novelty of folding your e-bike pretty much wears off immediately. But then you see all of these people that are like complaining about how it doesn't fold, and it's just, I hope the whole folding e-bike thing goes away. Like, nobody wants an e-bike that weighs 80 pounds that folds up, right? So either make a folding bike that is actually like small and compact and lightweight and do it the right way, or else just forget about it, because these e-bikes that weigh 70 pounds, 80 pounds, and you're trying to fold them up, and then a lot of times when they fold up, like it doesn't latch together, and it's just like this loosey-goosey thing, and you're trying to lift it, and it's crazy, and you throw your back out, and it's just so hard to lift those folding bikes. I folded mine like twice, and then I was just like, I'm done. This is useless.
It's carbon belt. That is an amazing premium component. And then
So Micro Mobility Industries I don't know if this channel used to be called something else, or if this guy was on a different channel in the past, but he has got some pretty good videos. So where's David Brand New? Because I had fun watching David Brand New's video. Let's see here. David Brand New, Lectric One. Why is this so hard to find? Alright, so here's David Brand New. He went out to the reveal. He's kind of showing off his OG Lectric here that he modded out. And he was kind of vlogging the whole trip when he went out there. I enjoyed seeing all of these people together. Was one of the things that I enjoyed about this event.
I think Levi's going to show us a new bike or something, so stay tuned.
There's a lot of vloggers all in the same spot here. It's just a lot. Like all these people like filming selfies and like GoPros on the sticks and stuff. That's still a lot for me. I'm still trying to get over like having my GoPro and riding my bike and then talking to myself. I'm not quite there yet with a 10-foot selfie stick riding my bike one-handed.
Here's the event. This is the cul-de-sac. I don't think this is the actual cul-de-sac.
But I like how David Brand New, he's just kind of vlogging it, and this is him walking up to the event, like just like if you were there going to the event. It's almost like you get to go with him, right? It's not like all this chopped down, highly edited stuff. It's like David Brand New. Maybe the video could have a little bit better of a title. Well, I guess it says Lectric 1 right there. So I don't know why YouTube's search was failing me, but this is one of my favorite videos to watch because he kind of vlogged it, and then when they went to go test the bikes, he ended up taking it up some like big hill on like this joyride, and I thought it was pretty fun. It was a pretty fun ride. Oh, here it is. So David Brand New, I don't know, I mean apparently he found like a mountain to take the Lectric 1 up. And if I was there, that's what I would have done. I would have been taking it up this big ass hill.
Hell, we're gonna have to pedal for sure, so let's go ahead and see how she does. Here we go, 3, 2.
But I mean, this is what you gotta do. You go to the event, you take this thing down the road, up a mountain.
Wanna go?
And I can see there were like burnout marks from where somebody else, there are a couple other reviewers that went up the same way too. But I thought this was really fun.
All right, how do we get over there though? Let's go right here. All right, let's see. This is freaking steep as hell. Currently going 12 miles per hour though.
So what happens if somebody gets they're out reviewing these bikes and then they get a flat on top of a mountain? I hope they got some sealant in the tires. It would be funny if somebody like got a flat and got stranded, or if their battery went dead or something, and then they were just like stuck and were late going back.
Oh yeah, I'm working, but the bike is doing it. And I think the gears are automatically shifting to like help out. We are doing it. Look how high we are. Oh, this is crazy. Whew. Oh my God, I am out of breath. This is one of the steepest hills I probably ever rode up. And the bike ate that shit. Whew.
So David Brand New, he took this thing up the mountain. I think this is Micro Mobility Industries that we were just looking at. So they both ended up on top of the mountain. They took the Lectric 1 through the paces up the mountain. I thought those were a couple of the better videos where these guys, they're not pussyfooting around. They're taking this thing up the mountain. So David Brand New, Micro Mobility Industries, everybody that rode their bike up to the top of this big mountain, good job. I thought those were some of the more interesting videos where people were able to kind of like put the bike through its paces in a very, very short period of time that they had to kind of review it and test it. And actually, I think some of them had to go back because the stem was coming loose. That Lectric would have these bikes ready to go and like torque spec'd and, everything ready. But I guess and David Brand New, he was kind of jumping curbs and stuff too, so who knows. But yeah, I thought David Brand New, I don't know why I can't find it in the YouTube search results anymore, but I thought that was one of the better reviews, kind of took it on an adventure. Alright, so now I'm on a video from Freshly Charged. One of the top comments says, I don't really understand how review channels can present unbiased reviews when they're given free trips across the country and other free goodies. And so that's something that you have to keep in mind. So Freshly Charged got to go to this thing as well. I enjoy his channel. He kind of showed the bike off, rode around a little bit. What about Rider Guide? I watched this. There's no timestamps in that video. That's kind of like a nope from me. Alright, so I kind of went through some of the review videos. My favorite ones, I would say David Brand New, he had a fun one. Micro Mobility Industries, I like that one. Jeremiah McIntosh, he does a good job with his videos, and he's always got them timestamped, so that I enjoy those. They're well put together, even if I made fun of them. Blinding. Alright, so let's think about this Lectric 1. So what would you have to do to this thing to make it comfortable? I mean, I think you would have to I think at the very least this thing's going to need a suspension seat post. So that's like $50 or $100. You're going to need more battery, right? So, I mean, if you buy the Lectric long-range battery, that's $200 more. And maybe they'll have a bigger one in the future. I mean, I hope they get a 20-amp one that can fit in here. Because 20 amps, to me, that's kind of like bare minimum. Especially when the bike can do 1,300 watts peak. So, I mean, for this bike to be a comfortable ride for me, you would need suspension seat posts. Let's call it $100. Bigger battery. I mean, I'd say it's going to be more than $200, right? Like if you want a 20 amp hour battery, they're probably gonna, if they ever come out with one, they're probably gonna charge like $400 more for that. So I mean, $100 for a seat post, $400 for a battery that's a decent size, probably $150 or $200 for a suspension fork. And actually, I think this a through axle wheel on the front, because a suspension fork that's for a 20-inch wheel with a through axle, that might be kind of expensive. Like it might be like $200, $250, for a fork. Let's call it $200. $200 for a suspension fork, $100 for a suspension seat post, that's $300. And then you're probably going to need $400 for battery, at least, just like for more battery. So I mean, that's like $700 that you'd have to put into this thing just to make it comfortable and have some range. And that's where it starts to get tough for me. Like, because that's bringing the cost of this bike up to like close to $3,000, just to have decent battery and a little more suspension. So it's going to be interesting to see like how this bike does, right? Because so far Lectric, they just have all of these bikes that are super cheap, right? Like in the past, this is kind of like what Lectric is known for, like the $900 e-bike. Right, the $750 e-bike. So now they're coming out with one that's a lot more expensive. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, and if this is something that people are going to be buying. I'm still kind of wondering. Look, it's really highlighted too here. Like it's got like its own little black kind of banner going on right here. It's going to be interesting to see who buys this thing, because it seems like they're kind of targeting people that just don't want to deal with it. Like they're targeting people that just want an e-bike and they don't care about the bike. They just want the bike to go from point A to point B and commute and get the job done. So it's kind of like they're targeting people that are kind of, don't want to shift a bike, or that, they just want to like get on it and go. But hub motors already kind of do that. And it's just so expensive to put that gearbox on the bike. I mean, I don't know. Hub motors already work really well for commuting, because even if the chain breaks, the hub motor is still going, right? Like the hub motor doesn't need a chain. You don't need to shift your bike to use a hub motor, right? You just hit the throttle and it goes. So I wonder, it's like they're trying to make a bike for like people that don't want to deal with bike things like shifting your gears and chain maintenance and lubing your chain and stuff. But is it worth that extra cost of that componentry? Or could most people just, like, if you don't want to shift the bike and you don't want to deal with maintenance, just get a hub motor bike, right? Like most e-bikes, most people aren't really pedaling, and the chain, like, they're not putting a lot of pedal power down into that chain where it's gonna like get stretched out super fast, or like, so I don't know. I mean, it's some expensive componentry. It's bringing the cost of the bike up, and I'm just wondering how this thing's gonna do in a few months here when it comes out in May. So it looks like they have a comfort package. So there's a giant seat and suspension seat post for like $100. Yeah, so that's going to drive the cost up a little bit. So let me know, what do you guys think about this Lectric One in the comments? Where'd it go? What do you guys think about this Lectric One? Could you get by with 10 amp hours of battery or 14 amp hours of battery? Is it worth spending the money for this fancy pinion, smart shift gearbox system? Is that worth the price tag to you? It's a cool idea to me. It's kind of interesting how you have to stop pedaling and pause before it will shift for you, because I thought that it could shift under load. So I wonder why it only shifts when you stop pedaling. That's kind of a question that I have. It seems like it will be low maintenance, right? The belt and the gearbox, and it's some cool features. But in terms of commuting, like, don't hub motors work okay? A lot of people don't even pedal, and this has a hub motor on it. So, I mean, if you're riding this bike around and you're just throttling around and you've got that pinion gearbox just sitting down here and you're not pedaling, that would be kind of a bummer. So it's kind of a bike that you definitely want to like be pedaling. I think a lot of people, they just don't pedal like when they're commuting. Like, yeah, I think it's one of those bikes where you kind of have to ride it to understand what it's about. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Are you gonna buy a Lectric One? Are you bummed out that it's so expensive? Are you bummed out that it does not fold? Are you concerned about that app? Some of the bike's functionality is only accessible through an app on your smartphone? Let me know in the comment. It's an interesting bike. I came out and I couldn't stop looking at it. It was really interesting to me, but kind of the more I think about it, it's like the belt costs $100 if you want to replace it. And I could buy, 20 chains for the cost of one of those belts? So I don't know. And there's no front suspension. That seems like a big issue. And I'm surprised that it's not an option in the upgrades. There was no upgrade option. They had the seat post and the giant comfy seat, but they didn't have a suspension fork upgrade for it yet. So I think that Lectric, they gotta get suspension fork upgrade going. They need to get 20 amp hour battery upgrade going, right? So I mean, there's a few upgrades that people are going to need that just aren't available yet. And there's one other thing, like there was a picture that I was looking at. I don't even know if it's here anymore. I think they might have taken it off the website. But in my previous, let's go here. I think it's on this page. Did they take that picture off the website? I think they did. Yeah, so it looks like they took that picture off the website, unless it's in here. Yeah. So on my previous video, there was an image on this page, and I remember it had there was a guy riding the bike. He was in that jacket and the sweater, and he was going around a corner, and it looked like the ground clearance was really low, and like he was almost hitting his feet on the ground. So let's go find that video. Here it is. I found it. So when I made this video, I'm pretty sure it was like yesterday or the day before, I made this video when they announced the bike, and there was a picture on this page, and I remember it was right here. It was this one right here, and they've since changed it to a different picture, but the picture that was there before was this one. And look at the ground clearance. Look at how close this guy's foot on the downstroke of the pedal. Look how close his foot and his pedal are getting to the ground. I mean, that's got to be like an inch. So, I mean, it's not like a unique problem to this bike. There's plenty of 20-inch bikes that have this problem. And even my bike, depending on what crank arms you have on your bike, even my bike, sometimes I'll do pedal strikes when I really like lean into a corner. But it just, I don't know, it doesn't seem like he's leaning a whole lot. It's hard to tell from this angle, but I just wonder about that ground clearance. It looks close. It looks close. So we'll have to see. And then I don't think it has the X peak, like the foot hitting the front wheel when you turn the bars, but it looks close. I don't know. So yeah, that's just something that I just remembered right before I was closing up this video. Was this ground clearance looks like there's maybe like an inch, and you might have some pedal strikes on this thing. So let me know. What do you think about this Lectric one? You think it's going to be a success? You think people are going to be lining up to buy this thing? Or, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about this pinion gearbox? What do you think about the pinion gearbox? Is that something that is worth spending, a good chunk of money to have on your bike? Or, like hub motors are already pretty good for commuting. You can just hit the throttle and go. You don't even need a chain. Like, it doesn't matter if your chain is rusty on a hub motor bike if you can just hit the throttle and it goes and it doesn't use the chain, right? So I think this pinion thing is cool. I don't know. I don't think the Lectric one, it's not like a bike that I'm interested in buying. I just thought it was cool that they're doing this and that they're putting this pinion gearbox on a bike in this price range. It would be interesting to ride this bike. I still think like it's hard to give any kind of a judgment on this bike until you've probably rode it for a while and got used to it, got used to that gearbox, and kind of become familiar and comfortable with all the advantages that the gearbox and the belt and the automatic shifting and the target pedal cadence that you can set in the app. You'd probably have to ride this bike for a while and get comfortable with it before you could really understand like what all of this gives you and what that riding experience is like. I think that's going to be a big part of this, is just like the riding experience. And it seems like you gotta kind of ride the bike a little bit to understand that. So I don't want to pass any judgments on the Lectric one. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool that they're doing this and they have this componentry on a bike that's in this price range. I think it's cool that Lectric is finally stepping up their game with the motors a little bit, right? Because on the X Peak and now the Lectric one, it's got a 750 watt motor that peaks at 1300 watts. So it's a little bit more powerful than Lectric has done in the past. I saw on Rad Power's new bikes they're still, I think they're still limiting them to 750 watts peak. So Rad Power, I think they're still kind of underpowered, I think. And I like how Lectric, it's got 1300 watts peak. They're kind of stepping that up a little bit. But I just don't know. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of like racking my mind, this bike. And I had to do this video just to kind of talk about it for a little bit. So let's talk in the comments. What do you guys think about this bike? What do you think about it? I think so far in 2024, it's probably one of the more interesting, disruptive bikes. But, you know, traditionally Lectric has just sold like $750,000, $1,000 bikes. And it seems like a lot of their existing target audience are kind of seeing the price tag on this thing, and they're just like, whoa, you know, like they're not going anywhere near it. So it's going to be interesting to see if this target market of people, these people that just want a commuter bike that goes without any maintenance or anything and not having to deal with it, it's going to be interesting to see if this thing is a success. And I hope it is, right? Because I would love to see these pinion systems become more widespread in the e-bike space, and I like what Lectric is trying to do here with this thing, kind of disrupt things and get some componentry on bikes that, you know, there's no other e-bikes that are $2,000 or $3,000, you know, or probably even $4,000 that have the gearbox and the belt drive and all this stuff on them. So I think it's cool what they're doing. I think it's very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see if anything changes over the next few months prior to the release of this bike. Hopefully nothing's big or crazy changes. Hopefully they can keep the brake lights on the bike, and, you know, there's not any big component swaps like we've seen over the last few years. So yeah, let me know, guys. Let me know. What do you think about the Lectric One in the comments? Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. If you don't like it, leave me a comment and let me know. What's on your mind? What's bugging you? Just let it all out in the comments. And which review video was your favorite? Let me know. So that's the Lectric One. I just took a look at it. Looks very interesting, very disruptive. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. So cool stuff, Lectric. Good work. Doing something different. It's pretty remarkable. So thanks to everybody at Lectric for working on this bike, putting it together. Thanks to all the reviewers for going out to Arizona and testing the bike and getting us all this footage to review and look at and check out. And yeah, let me know, guys. What do you think in the comments? Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. E-Bike Builders signing out. I'll see you next time. Peace out.